There's a type of person who scares everyone on social media. Not because they post too much, but because they never post anything. Think about it. You probably know someone like that. That person who has Instagram, Facebook, maybe TikTok, but their profile looks like a desert. No photos, no stories, no opinion on anything. And when you ask why that person doesn't post, the answer is always vague. I don't really like it. I don't have time. I prefer to keep to myself. But is that all there is to it? Is there something deeper going on here? Here's a fact that will surprise you. Recent studies show that about 40% of social media users rarely or never publish their own content. They're there. They see everything. But they remain completely invisible. And the psychology behind this is far more fascinating than you might imagine. These people aren't just shy. They aren't just introverted. There's something more going on. Something that says a lot about how we build identity, seek validation, and protect ourselves emotionally in a world that demands you always be visible, always available, always performing. And before we continue, if you want to understand more about human behavior, psychology, and the mysteries of the mind, subscribe to the channel and comment below. Are you on the team that posts everything or the invisible team? I want to know. Back to the video. Chapter 1, the first layer. Silent control. Let's start with the obvious. When someone doesn't post anything, the first thing we think is, this person is shy, insecure, afraid of being judged. And look, that might even be true in some cases. But it's not the whole story. Because for many of these people, silence is not weakness, it's power, it's control. Think about it. When you post something, you give a part of yourself to the world. You open the door to your life and let strangers in, look, judge, comment. And even if you don't admit it, you're waiting for the likes, waiting for the comments, waiting for validation. Now imagine someone who has decided not to do that. Someone who has decided that their own life doesn't need an audience, that their experiences don't need external approval to be real. This person isn't hiding. They are protected. And here comes a psychological concept called psychological ownership. It's the idea that when you share something deeply personal, you lose some emotional ownership of it. The experience ceases to be solely yours and becomes collective property. Anyone can interpret it, anyone can distort it, anyone can diminish it. So what about those people who don't post? Those people are protecting the psychological privacy of their own lives. Those people keep those moments untouched, pure, just theirs. And there's more. Studies show that people who post less frequently tend to have very specific psychological traits: greater self-control, greater capacity for introspection, and less dependence on external validation. These people don't need the world to confirm their existence, because they know they exist. Chapter 2, the journey of emotional exhaustion. But it wasn't always like this. Many of these people weren't born invisible. They became invisible. Let me tell you a story you might recognize. Imagine someone who, a few years ago, posted a lot. Photos of trips, moments with friends, achievements, thoughts. They were present, active, engaged. But over time, something began to change. This person realized that every time they posted something beautiful, they felt an invisible pressure to surpass it the next time. Each like became an expectation. Each comment became a silent demand. And little by little, they realized they weren't living anymore. They were performing. He started thinking about angles before he thought about feelings. He began choosing seats because they looked good in a photo, not because he wanted to be there. And then came the emotional burnout, that profound exhaustion from maintaining an edited version of himself. And do you know what that person did? They simply stopped. No announcement, no farewell post. They just disappeared from the feed. And guess what happened? At first, they felt a strange emptiness, but then they began to feel something they hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Freedom to live without captions. Freedom to make mistakes without an audience. Freedom to be imperfect without fear. And here's the point. The pressure of self-presentation on social media is so real that it's become a technical term in psychology. It's the constant anxiety of managing how you're perceived, even when no one is actively watching you. It's exhausting, and many people have simply given up playing this game. Chapter 3, the invisible system of conditioning. Now let's delve deeper, because there's something happening on social media that most people don't realize, an invisible system of psychological conditioning. Every time you post something and receive likes, comments, and reactions, your brain releases dopamine. It's the same neurotransmitter involved in addictions, rewards, and dependencies. Over time, you begin to associate your self-esteem with this digital validation. You start to think, if I posted and nobody liked it, could it be that what I experienced wasn't important? It's surreal, but it's real. We started measuring the quality of our experiences by the amount of attention they generate online. But what about people who don't post? They've broken that cycle. They've developed what psychologists call an internal locus of control. This means their sense of worth comes from within, not from the outside. They don't need the digital echo to believe they are enough. And you know what the irony is? Research shows that people who take long breaks from social media or who simply stop posting experience a measurable increase in emotional stability and life satisfaction. Because when your identity stops being constantly mirrored back to you, it solidifies. Your identity becomes real. You stop editing your life to make it digestible. You start living it in all its messy, beautiful, and unfiltered complexity. Chapter 4. The Hidden Fear. But I need to be honest with you, not everything is spiritual enlightenment and emotional freedom, because some people don't post for a much heavier reason: fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear that silence is better than the risk of being ignored. Imagine the feeling of posting something you think is important and watching it sink into the feed without any reaction. It hurts, right? It's like screaming into a void and realizing no one heard. So, some people decide it's safer not to scream. And there's another side to it too. There are people who simply can't recognize themselves on social media. They look at that space and think, this isn't me. This doesn't reflect who I really am. And if I try to fit who I am into this format, I'll lose myself. So they choose invisibility not as a strategy, but as a means of preservation. Because there are moments in life that are too profound, too sacred, to be reduced to social media posts. And here's a truth nobody talks about. The quietest people online often have the loudest minds. They're not absent, they're overflowing. They've simply chosen silence over spectacle. Chapter 5. Real Connection and Digital Connection. Here's the cruelest paradox of social media. Social media was created to connect people, but in practice it often does the opposite. It leaves you more isolated than ever. Because when you don't post, something interesting happens. You start to realize who really cares about you, who reaches out to you without needing a story to remind them you exist, who calls you, who genuinely messages you, who shows up in your life without expecting anything in return. These people who live invisibly online, they build relationships that don't need proof, that don't need documentation, that exist in shared silence, in eye contact, in laughter that needs no witnesses. And here's a curious thing. Often the people who don't post anything are the ones with the most interesting stories to tell, but they save those stories for when you're sitting on the other side of the table, not on the other side of the screen. Because true connection isn't measured in comments or likes, it's measured in presence, in vulnerability, in shared time without performance. Chapter 6. The Rediscovery of Reality. Carl Rogers, one of the fathers of humanistic psychology, spoke extensively about something called congruence. It's the alignment between who you are inside and who you show on the outside. And he said that psychological health depends on it. But on social media, this congruence is constantly distorted. You live a curated version of yourself, an edited version, a version that doesn't show the cracks, the doubts, the bad days. So, when someone decides not to post, it might be a way of keeping that congruence intact, of preserving the fragile truth between the inner world and the outer world. Recent studies from the University of Copenhagen have shown that people who drastically reduced their use of social media reported a greater sense of authenticity and less social anxiety, because they stopped living for the camera and started living for themselves. Chapter 7. Silence as an Answer. Here's something that will blow your mind. People who remain invisible online aren't running away from the world, they're returning to it. Because while everyone else is looking at their screens, these people are looking up, at the sky, at the details no one else notices, at the smile of someone who won't become content. They recovered something we had lost, the ability to live without proof, to feel without needing to explain, to exist without needing constant validation. And perhaps their silence isn't an absence. Perhaps it's a presence so intense it can't be contained on a screen. So the next time you notice someone who never posts anything, don't assume that person is hiding. Don't assume they're strange, cold, or disconnected. Perhaps this person simply found peace in the quiet corners of existence, in places not illuminated by the blue glow of a screen. Perhaps they remembered what the rest of us have forgotten, that being invisible doesn't mean being alone, that being quiet doesn't mean being empty. Sometimes the truest expression of who you are isn't a post, it's silence, because ultimately we weren't made to be performers. We were made to be people, and those people who don't post, they remind us of that every day. If you've watched this far, you may have identified with what was said in this video. Know that there's nothing wrong with you, you've simply chosen to live your life differently. Continue living life the way you believe it will. Thank you very much for your time, and until the next video.